Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. So after my virtual host tutorial, I realized something. I showed how to set up virtual machines, but I never explained how to use one. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to actually use VirtualBox in VMware once you actually set up the virtual machines. We're going to go over things like USB pass-through, copying some files, full screen display settings, and a couple other things. This is a full guided tutorial, so let's get right into it. So you just finished setting up your virtual host and installed your OS. Now we need to figure out how to actually use the virtual machine itself. Starting out with VirtualBox, then move on to VMware. So once you have VirtualBox and your virtual machine pretty much set up to go, just right click and hit start, or you can hit start. Now, once it loads up, it's probably going to bring you to another window. All you need to do is just drag it to your main screen and double click on it to make it full screen. Now, once it starts loading, your mouse and keyboard will lock in. As you can see on the right side, it's auto capturing keyboard and mouse integration. Click on right control key. That's the default host to back out of it. So now we can move our mouse back to our regular PC, and then we click into it. Now I changed this thing so it doesn't actually auto grab my mouse, but that's how I have it set up. Now depending on the host you're using and the drive it's on, it's going to take a little bit to actually start. Now what you're going to do next is install the guest editions. To get this, at the top menu, click on devices. Click insert guest edition CD image. This is only really needed at the beginning. Once it's done installing, all you need to do is just reboot your virtual machine and it's good to go. Now once Guest Editions is installed, you should be able to resize your virtual machine, copy paste, and things should be running smoother. Now speaking of copy paste, that is just basic things to the keyboard. If you hit devices, hit shared clipboard, you want to select host to guest, guest to host, or bidirectional depending on what you want to actually run it through. Now, host to guest means it's only going to copy anything that's on your main system to the virtual machine. Guest to host means it's only going to copy what's on your virtual machine to your regular host. And then bidirectional allows you to copy and paste vice versa on both machines. Now, if I minimize this and reset it, you can see that it's not actually outputting the entire display. We can modify this by going to View, and make sure Auto Resize Guest Display is enabled. If it isn't, just enable it. We can also adjust the window size to the guest size. Now, if you make it full screen and it's still not there, you may actually have to modify the display settings. So on your desktop, whether you're on Windows or Linux, right click, configure display settings. And you're going to want to make sure that it's pretty much at the highest you can do. For me, it's 1920 by 1080. Hit apply. We're going to hit keep. And it's now the full size of my screen. Now it is a little bit bigger. For example, I actually have to use the scroll bar to actually look up and down. So sometimes it's not best to make it the full size. So if you want, you can just hit View, adjust window size, and it may be a little bit bigger than your screen. Now sometimes it's not best to do this full in VirtualBox. Even setting it to 1920 by 1080, your full screen size, you will have to use this scroll bar to see the full display. So unless you want to go into View and hit Scaled mode, which will make it smaller, and then we can just increase the size as it defined as in scale mode. It's always going to be at that 1080, 1920 by 1080 screen size, but it just allows us to set the size. I really wouldn't do that because then you're dealing with weird scaling issues, and scaled mode doesn't actually allow you to see the original UI that you get in non-scaled mode. Now to exit scale mode, all you need to do is hit your host key C or like Windows key. Now to exit scaled mode, all you need to do is hit the right control and the C key. Just reach across your keyboard, hit Control C, and now we are back in default mode. Now, most of the other stuff like USB pass-through and shared folders are pretty much the same. For example, the bottom here, we have our SATA drive or the virtual drive that we have it plugged into. We also have everything else like our adapter for our Ethernet. We have our audio output and audio input. Stuff like that is just what we see here. If we're going to plug something in, it's going to populate down here. We also have our right control, which is our host key. We can just easily select our kind of pass through some keys here. If you wanted to run Control-Alt-Delete, all we have to do is just right click and hit Insert Control-Alt-Delete, and it would do this on the system. Now, USB pass-through, just go into your virtual machine settings by hitting Machine, Settings. And a lot of this was informed when we first set this up. Click on USB. And here is our USB controller with USB 1.1, 2.0, or 3.0 enabled. Now, USB 3.0, if you're running Windows, I think you need the extension pack, but VirtualBox and I think VMware both have it, so a lot of this is already set up. Now you can select USB device filters if you can't find a specific USB device or anything. That's a little bit more advanced. Now we're going to move on to shared folders since we're here. If you click on shared folders, which funnily enough is right below it, we can add a shared folder that is between our host system and our virtual machine, as well as network drives. So if you hit this plus button, you specify the folder path. If it's not already created, just hit other, and it's going to bring up your file explorer. You're going to select the folder name and the mount point that it mounts onto the system. Have it as read-only, auto-mount, and make permanent. Now read-only does that, it makes it only read-only. Auto-mount automatically mounts it when the system boots, and then make permanent, the shared folder is just going to be permanent no matter what. Now we got a couple more things to look at before we check out VMware. Copy, paste, and drag and drop. We already spoke about copy, paste, but drag and drop allows you to easily move files between your host system and the virtual machine. I have a text file called daemon.chroot from another tutorial on my host machine. If I just drag this over, now you can see that I have a red circle with a line through it, also like a deny symbol that says that I cannot actually put this on this. To enable drag and drop cross, you need to go to devices, drag and drop, and make sure that host to guest, guest to host, or bidirectional is enabled. If you're doing work on the virtual machine and you want it on your system, I would actually set up a shared folder just so you can easily access it without having to copy paste between the virtual machine. But if you're running things on the specific virtual machine and you don't feel like setting it up, it's just select which one you want. Now, if I hit bidirectional, I may have to reboot my virtual machine for it to actually go through. Now, and to try to do it again, you can see that I get the guest editions are not installed. Now, again, sometimes it automatically installs the guest editions. This time it didn't. So if we hit devices, insert guest edition CD, open up our file explorer, we can see down here that the guest edition CD image, we can see that it is inserted in our system. Click on the ISO, and then just hit whichever OS you're running. We are going to run a Linux version. Now, if it needs to be run as administrator, easiest way is to open this terminal, sudo, and then we want to run that auto run file. You can also just run autorun.sh. I ended up switching OSs just to make things run a little bit smoother. Now that you installed the guest edition CD image, all you need to do is just take your file, drag, and drop it over. Now sometimes it's going to say, hey, the VM timed out. All you need to do is just reboot your virtual machine and it's fine, or just need to retry dragging and dropping over and it'll work. Now we're going to take a look at some network options. Go to machine, go to settings, and then take a look at network. Now here we have our NAT, bridge adapter, internal network, host only adapter, generic driver, NAT network, cloud network, which is currently experimental, and not attached. Now things like NAT, it uses your host internet. Bridged allows your VM to act like a separate device on the network. Sometimes it will and sometimes it won't work. Host only, it can only talk to your real system. And then internal is for talking between VMs. Now things like host only adapter, generic driver, and NAT network, I haven't actually looked into it, so I can't explain what they do, as well as cloud network. So those are still things I'm looking into, but if you pretty much just want to start using your VM and stuff, just use NAT, that defaults it to that state anyway. And then we have some extra things like port forwarding, the adapter type that it uses, and anything else. And you can also set up multiple network adapters. Now, most of this stuff, network, serial ports, USB, you can't set up while the virtual machine is running. You actually have to turn it off and then go ahead and modify these settings in here. Now, if you hit right control and F, it's going to throw you into full screen mode, which is a little bit different than the scaled mode we saw before. And then right control and then L goes into seamless mode. So there's a bunch of just shortcuts you can use to do different things. You can also find them under view and here. Now, one final thing we're going to take a look at is snapshots. Doing this just makes it easier to roll back in case you do anything or break your virtual machine. If you hit machine, hit take snapshot, name the snapshot anything in the description, and hit OK. It's going to take a snapshot of that and save it. Now, it should be saving it within the folder that you have your virtual machine saved to. It's not going to save it to anything else. And some quick tips before we move on to VMware Workstation Player. If you want to speed things up on your VirtualBox, go to Machine, go to Settings. Here on the motherboard, you can add more RAM, its boot order, processor, adding more cores. Under Display, you can add more virtual memory. You can change the monitor count, scale factor for them. You can enable remote display, that's for something else, and also enable recording. And if you want to do some extended features for display, just enable 3D acceleration. And that's it. Now, if you want to close out your virtual machine, hit close. You can save the machine state, send a shutdown signal, or just fully power off the machine. If you want to come back to this later on, just hit save the virtual machine state. It will use some extra storage because it's saved in the current state. Shutdown will just shut down everything, and then sending that signal will treat it like a regular computer if you hit the shutdown button. And that's it for VirtualBox. I probably missed a couple things as there's a lot to these virtual hosts that you can do and you can do with them. But just comment down below if I missed something and you have a question. We're going to move on to VMware Workstation Player. For VMware Workstation Player, it's the same deal here. Open up VMware Player, pick your VM, and hit play. You can hit play virtual machine, or you can hit this drop down and hit power on. Now, just to make things a little bit different, I'm going to be running Windows this time instead of Linux. But that's about it. So if you want to make it full screen, just double tap up here. The scaling is going to be a bit weird since it's just turning on the virtual machine, but once it starts running, everything's going to be perfectly fine. First thing you want to do is install the VMware tools. Go to Player, hit Manage, and it's going to say Install VMware Tools, and just let it run its course. Reboot it when you're done, and you're going to have auto resizing, copy paste, file drag and drop, better mouse and display performance, and a couple other features. Now, plugging in USB devices is actually easier in VMware. When you plug in your device, at the top menu, go to Player, go to Removable Devices, and all of your USB devices will pop up here. Now, normally when you plug in a fresh device, it's going to pop up asking if you would like to connect it to your virtual machine and disconnect it from host. Now, sometimes if your USB device doesn't pop up, you're going to actually just reboot your virtual machine and try again. It's only going to grab devices that are plugged in to a USB. Sometimes if you have like a USB hub, it might not see it. You actually have to pass that USB hub through. Now, shared folders, go to Player, go to Manage, go to Virtual Machine Settings, and here are our virtual machine settings. Go to the Options tab, go down to Shared Folders. You can hit Always Enabled or Enabled until next power off or suspend. This is a temporary option. This is fully enabled. Whichever one you hit, you can either map as a network drive, or you can just add the actual folder path and it's going to set up you through the wizard. Now we can check out full screen and Unity mode under virtual machine settings here under. Now for copy, paste, and drag and drop, once you install the VMware tools, copy, paste, and drag and drop just works. You don't actually have to select directional, bidirectional. It should just easily work bidirectional. For example, we're just going to copy over this text file I have. There's a plus icon. If we let go, it's going to copy it onto our virtual machine. Same thing if I copy that text file and I just make a new text file. I hit paste. We see that I just copied that text from earlier. Now to enter full screen or Unity mode, you can hit Control-Alt-Enter, or hit player, hit full screen or Unity mode. Unity mode just makes guest apps float on your host like they're native. It's not available on every OS, but it's kind of cool when it works. You can also find it under the VM settings. So going back to settings, in Unity, we can see that it says show borders, show badges, or use custom color and window borders. Enable applications menu, just allows us to go there. We also have a feature called auto login, which automatically logs into the account that you have on your system when the guest OS boots. Enabling that, disabling that kind of doesn't matter. Some OSs actually have auto login, so you don't actually have to put that on the virtual host itself. For network settings, since we're here under virtual machine settings, go to hardware, go to network adapter, and here we have NAT, host only, and custom. We also have LAN segment the LAN, and advanced. Now NAT uses the host device IP address and everything. Most users are just defaulted with that. Bridged uses if your virtual machine wants to show up on your router or test servers. We can replicate the physical connection. And then host only is good for isolated test environments. If you want to disconnect it entirely, just hit connected, just click that, and it's going to disconnect and then connect that power. You just click that one too. And then finally, for just regular performance tips, if you feel your virtual machine is going a little bit slow and you have the ability to add more processor cores or more memory, processor cores you do need to turn off the virtual machine to add. Memory you can actually add on the fly. Hard disk you need to actually have the virtual machine off. And then if you go to display, you can enable accelerate 3D graphics, change the maximum resolution, the number of monitors, and the maximum of guest memory you can use for the graphics memory. All of these need to be adjusted while the virtual machine is off. Now, unlike VirtualBox, VMware doesn't actually have built-in snapshots. So a nice workaround is just turning off your virtual machine or just suspending it and just copying the entire folder. Yes, it does use more storage, but if something breaks, you can always just revert back to that. And that's pretty much it. Now, just closing out of VMware, you can hit power, shut down guest, suspend, or restart, or just hit the X button and do the same thing here. And that's pretty much the full tour. I mean, there was some things I missed and didn't fully cover. And that's just basic VM day-to-day usage, moving files, using USB devices, full screen, and other things to keep it running smooth. Pretty much to recap, VirtualBox is great if you want control, don't mind some tweaking. VMware is polished, especially for Windows, and it's easier for USB and drag and drop. Both are great, so it depends just what your use case is as to what you want to get. If this video helped, hit that like button, subscribe for more tutorials, and let me know down in the comment section what you should check out next. If you had any issues or any questions, let me know down in the comment section below as well. And thank you so much for watching. See you all in the next video.